It's funny. I saw my daughter this weekend. I went to Connecticut, and we went to meditation on the beach at 7 o'clock in the morning. She has this group that she meets with, and they asked, "Oh, how are you? How are you doing?" And I right away, the Course in Miracles came up, and it's so amazing how many people are familiar with the Course, and it's just something so wonderful to be able to know that we have and that we can rely on for healing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you are live streaming on YouTube. So Susan Michelle, please,
Thank
this
you.
microphone yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. My beautiful friend and soul sister, Myrna Skoller, is here from Boca Raton, Florida. She is the author of Private Lessons with Jesus, which is based on the Course in Miracles workbook. It's the perfect companion. How are you today, Myrna?
I had a great weekend, came off a wonderful weekend, so I'm doing just fine. I went to a wedding in the Catskill Mountains, way up in the wilderness, but it really makes me see how far I am from nature, the wilderness, nature itself. It was just extraordinary for me. And it brought back memories of when I was a kid and used to go to the mountains all the time, Catskill Mountains. So it was very nice. And I spent it with my two daughters as well. So nothing to complain about. Wonderful. How about you, Susan?
Good, good, good. Yeah, I'm doing well. That's so cool that you spent time with your two daughters. And I know you started saying that you had these morning meditations that were group meditations. That is so cool. You know, how long were the meditations?
About an hour. It was meditation
Really?
on the beach. Yeah. With a group that my daughter meets with occasionally. And so it's nice to see how committed she is as well, with her. Doing it with her was lovely.
Is she a Course in Miracles student?
She's not a Course in Miracles student per se, but she knows the
Hmm.
principles of A Course in Miracles,
Hmm.
which is love, forgiveness, stuff like that.
Very cool. That is so
Yeah,
cool. I'd
the
love to be doing a
basics.
morning meditation with a group of people because that's just so empowering, such an empowering way to start the day. Well, I will start out as I usually do with the introduction from my book. And what I write is I write, My passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. Before the talk today, I was listening to Course in Miracles on Audible, like I usually do, which I love doing. I was also drawn to a Wayne Dyer YouTube video that just kept popping up on my feed. And I know Wayne Dyer was a Course in Miracles student. He passed, I guess, maybe about 10 years ago now. He's really wise because what he was saying was very aligned, analogous to the principles of A Course in Miracles. What he was stressing in this video was that God is not something outside of us. God is within. So just like my little introduction states and A Course in Miracles states over and over again, we don't have to search for something outside of ourselves. We don't have to when we pray, we're not praying to a man that sits on a throne in the heavenly clouds. That's really the God that I grew up with. I thought of a God that looked a little like Santa Claus with a big white gown sitting on a throne in the kingdom of heaven in the clouds. So I was praying to something outside of myself. And again, what A Course in Miracles teaches, what Wayne Dyer was talking about in this video, is that we're actually not searching for anything in the outside world. We're not praying to something outside of ourselves. What we need to do is we need to remember how much love we have within ourselves. And basically, when we can surrender our will to his will, we can align ourselves with the thoughts of God. We can allow the Holy Spirit to speak through us. And that's how we know how much we have within. So it's about remembering the truth of who we are, aligning ourselves with that energy. And again, it's not easy because it's not what the world teaches, but it is simple. It's like just the truth of who we are. So A Course in Miracles isn't teaching us the meaning of love, because when we connect to the truth of who we are going to align ourselves with the thoughts of love, which is to align ourselves with the truth of who we are. What A Course in Miracles is teaching us to do is to remove the blocks, to identify the blocks, to release the blocks. And then naturally, when we settle down to the truth of who we are, we will just be unconditional love. And that's really, what so many spiritual thought systems teach. And I love the fact that your daughter, because obviously Course in Miracles is not the only path to heaven. It's one clear path to heaven. It's my path to heaven. Most people in this room, it's their path to heaven, but it's not the only path to heaven. I think meditation is just such a empowering way to connect with the divine within. Right, Myrna?
Absolutely. I was listening to Edgar Casey, actually, and I was never really familiar with him. I knew the name, but he had played, or actually what was being played on this Audible that I was listening to was exactly what you were just saying, Susan, that, the love of God is not something that you pray to. It's something that comes from within. In other words, the God within that we're connected to is what we relate to and how we begin to understand the truths that we're here to learn. That's what we are given to do. And, when I think about how long it takes to learn the lessons that we're here to learn, it really is mind-boggling, because we go through so many of the ups and downs of the world, the illusion of the world, and we buy into it and we live within it, when we're really given to experience the holiness, the greatness that we are experiencing, that we can experience, which is the God within, the God that we are, that is within all of us. And once we connect with that, it becomes then much easier to follow the path home. And when you hear somebody else like Casey, who was wonderful, he was a clairvoyant. When you think about it, he was born in 1877 and he died in 1945, and he understood healing, and he was a clairvoyant, and he's so much of what I was listening to parallels what I learned through A Course in Miracles. It's all connected. It's all a variation of the same thing, and it's all something that we are given to follow a path to. There are so many different paths that all lead to the same place. If you're following the path of God, if you're following the connection that connects to the Christ, the Christ mind, that is so vast. And that's what reality is, when you realize the significance of that, as opposed to what we live in this world that we get so caught up in. We see that nothing really means anything if you're of the world, if you're living the material life and you think that's all that's important. But if you kind of can vacate from that place of where you're really captive sometimes, if you don't release it, then you're just really going around in circles. And I can go on and on about that, because I've gone around in those circles many times during my life. And now I really believe that I walk a straight path. If I fall off the path, I'm able to get back on it, following my passion, following who I truly am, a connection to God.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, A Course in Miracles is definitely not the only path to God. It is one clear path to God. I think there are basic principles, though, that all clear paths share. You were finding a lot of truth in Edgar Casey. I've seen his YouTube videos. I haven't listened to a lot of his YouTube videos, but I know you always lead me to very clear teachers. So I'm sure there's a lot of truth in what he said. I mean, A Course in Miracles wasn't channeled scribed until the 1970s. He lived before A Course in Miracles. I mean, the truth is the truth is the truth. However, there are common themes that all clear paths share. I listen to a lot of Buddhist videos. I think the Buddhism, especially the more metaphysical Buddhist thought systems, are very clear. Yeah, they just say the same thing in different ways. Um, that we are spiritual beings inhabiting these human forms for a short time period to learn lessons. Our soul came back to this earthly classroom to learn lessons. Like, we chose to come down here to learn lessons. Sometimes when we get caught up in the midst of our darkness, it's hard to remember that, but we can get a lot of clarity through the obstacles that are presented to us in life. The challenges, the obstacles become opportunities for us to learn deeper lessons, deeper soul lessons. So that's why, as Course in Miracles states, it's important to be grateful for everything, to be grateful for our lessons as well as our blessings. And what I was thinking was that clear paths, again, Course in Miracles is definitely not the only path to enlightenment, but it's clear. And there are certain characteristics that all clear paths share, and a huge one that is so necessary for healing is forgiveness, because that's definitely something, that I'm learning right now. I had this episode on the boat about a week ago, which I shared in my last talk. A lot of pain points came to the surface for healing purposes. it was important for me to forgive these other family members who triggered me, and when we can, I think when we get triggered in life, it's about owning the pain instead of projecting the pain, and then forgiving the person that triggered the pain. And by forgiving them, we are reconnecting to our own innocence. So that character trait, forgiveness, I mean, that's also shared in the traditional Christian faith. That's a very important character trait in the traditional Christian faith. I have a lot of traditional Christian friends. I had a long discussion with one yesterday, and there are so many, commonalities that we share, and then there's another very close friend who does not really agree with forgiveness, and again, it's not my place to judge this person, but I just don't think that true healing is possible without forgiveness, because when you hang on to resentments, when you play the blame game, that's just keeping your mind in the clouds, that's just keeping your mind in the darkness. Like, I mean, there's no way to heaven. And what is heaven? Heaven is a state of mind, heaven is a place of peace, love, joy, and happiness. But there's no way that mental state can be reached without total and complete forgiveness. Because when I don't forgive my brother, if I hang on to a resentment towards anyone, in the sonship, if there's one person that I choose not to forgive, I cannot fully connect with God the Father. I cannot fully connect with the truth of who I am. Because the only way I can feel the essence of innocence, the only way I can release guilt totally and completely, is by forgiving everyone. And again, it's not easy. It's simple. It's a simple truth because only the love is real, but it's not easy because it's not what the world teaches. Again, you can just turn on, I do listen to the news. You can turn on the news. There is so much animosity, of one party towards the other. It's very prevalent in the society today. But it's not of God, because God God does not need to forgive me, because God has never condemned me. But God is already healed. But I do need to forgive everyone totally and completely, because if I don't, I can't reconnect to my own innocence. Right, Myrna?
Forgiveness is such an important part of our learning cycle here on Earth. It's everything really, because it releases us from our own guilt. When we're not forgiving somebody, or we're holding on to the things that we can't forgive, and we hold on to it, then it doesn't serve us in any way. It's so important. And unless you learn to do it, yes, you can read about it and you can know it and you can speak about it, about forgiveness. But unless you've really experienced what it's like to truly forgive, and how much life changes when you do forgive, it really becomes the essence of the fact that we have to become aware of that and never let go of that concept. It's such an important learning point, and something that we have to really recognize is so significant in what we're here to do. I was just looking up, I have my Course in Miracles book, and it says, it's simply ACIM teaches that the world we perceive is a projection of our own thoughts and beliefs, particularly those based on a sense of separation and fear. Okay, so when I guess forgiveness is also the release from fear, separation. when we can't forgive somebody, it just keeps us tied to the separation. And what we're here to know and what we're here to learn is that separation is something that we don't want to be a part of. And that's the illusion, that we believe that we're all separate. It's hard to get the concept when we're angry at somebody that, that we're not separate individuals. It's hard to grasp the truth that we're all just one creation, the creation of God, one connection, one wholeness, one complete belief that we are together, all together as one. And when we can really feel that and know it and experience it, then then forgiveness is something that becomes easy. It really does, because what we're holding on to is an illusion. And who wants to really live the elusive life? Living an illusion. It's not what we're here to experience, because we're not going to gain anything from that. And you mentioned the news, it really is funny. Sometimes I turn it on just to kind of laugh at it in a way, because you talk about separation. It used to be where the news was the news. Everybody reported the news the same way. You could discuss the news with your brothers, with your friends, with your people that you, are speaking to. But it's become such a vast disconnect. You've got to be careful what you say and who you're saying it to, and how that can really create you know create problems, because everybody now views the news differently, because the news reports so differently. So all you can really do is, what I try to do is, I look at the news. Yes, I want to be informed, but I try to just be detached from it, to go on my life, recognizing that I'm here to just go on, be happy, enjoy what I'm given to enjoy, what I'm given to feel, the appreciation that I can feel for just being a part of the essence of love. And certainly the news certainly doesn't show love in any way. It doesn't explain what love is, because you don't see it. All you see are just conflicting reports, people kind of at odds with each other. And that in itself is a learning experience, when you really see what the ego can do. Look what the ego can do. It just divides people, it divides the world, it keeps people apart. But on another level, people are becoming more attuned to the Edgar Casey's teachings today, and the Course in Miracles teaching, and Science of Mind, and so many various different learning paths that we've all chosen to walk on, because they all lead to the same place. It doesn't matter what you're listening to, if it's a spiritual something that you can relate to, it's that everybody can relate to it, because it's not just one particular path that we're tied to. It all leads to God. So whoever I listen to, or any of the audibles, or the YouTube videos that we watch, they are, anything I hear that rings true, I can relate to, because I'm on the path, and to stay on the path is the trick, which I've learned to do, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of great thoughts there, Myrna. A lot of great thoughts. You're very clear. You're very wise. I mean, what I was speaking on the phone with my Christian friend yesterday was the whole subject of anger. Like, what do you do when you are feeling anger? I mean, the traditional Christian faith states that anger is not of God. A Course in Miracles states that anger in any form is unjustified. who gets angry. The spirit doesn't get angry. The ego can get really, really angry. So what do you do when you feel angry? Like, I don't think that the right choice is to pretend that you don't and suppress the anger, because that doesn't do anyone any good at all. When we suppress our feelings of anger, it turns to disease and it kills us internally. When we project our anger, it causes conflict, and that does us no good at all. I've known people in my life. Well, let's go back to my parents. My mother suppressed her anger. She died of cancer at the young age of 52. My father projected his anger, so he was very, very difficult to get along with. Neither of those choices actually work. I think the best thing to do, why do we get angry? We get angry because we feel like someone is taking advantage of us. We get angry because we feel like we are being treated unfairly. So when the anger arises, we are actually seeing the world in a distorted way. We're seeing the darkness. But I think what we need to do is we need to own the feelings, and we need to give our anger to God so he can help us to transform the pain. I think that's the answer. Definitely own the feeling and then allow God to transform our pain, because, when I'm very angry, like I don't know how to handle it, but God is always grateful when I can give my feelings to him. Because that was one of the character traits that came from a family member on the boat about a week ago that got reflected back to me, is anger. So I think to be able to get to the other side of it is very important. Anything that is not love is basically fear. So anger is a form of fear. Fear is a big umbrella, and any feeling that is not love falls under the umbrella of fear. So when I'm angry, I'm really afraid. I know that the emotion directly beneath the anger, that is also a fear-based emotion. But again, you have to get to the core of it in order to transmute it. The feeling under the anger is sadness. Sadness is actually a much more vulnerable feeling than anger. Because when I had this lesson, this challenge on the boat about a week ago, one of my family members got real angry, which it wasn't so easy for me to connect to, but what I saw underneath the anger was the sadness. And I think that's a feeling that's kind of easier for me to connect to. Because again, in order to get to the other side of the pain, we need to own the pain. And they're all clouds. All those fear-based emotions are clouds that are blocking the sun. But when we can own the pain, when we can release the pain into the hands of God, we can transmute the pain, we can transform the pain, and we can go through the pain into the presence of God, into the presence of the truth of who we are. So that's a very good thing. what I was listening to in the Wayne Dyer YouTube video is what he spoke about is in order to transform the world and in order to make a difference, I guess that's a good word, in order to make a difference, in order to be the miracle workers that we were born to be. It's not about preaching. We don't want to tell people what to do. What we want to do is to just be fully present in the truth of who we are. And that is how we will change the world. It's interesting because now that again I'm thinking back into this time on the boat, I think what provoked one family member's anger was the other family member was preaching, and I think when we start preaching, we can come across very controlling, very dictatorial. But when we step into the truth of who we are, when we step into our presence, other people will automatically be drawn to us. It's about just, I guess, residing in that state of love, not telling people what to do, not trying to change people, but just staying present with the love that we are all a part of. That's what A Course in Miracles is basically teaching us to do. It's teaching us that we have nothing to prove, we have nothing to change. All we need to do is just remember that love is always available to us. Remember that we are a part of love. And when we feel like we are lacking in any way, we don't need to go out there and get what we're lacking. What we need to do is we need to give that love to our brother. And by extending God's love to our brother, we remember how much we have within us to give. So if we want something from the world, what we need to do is we need to connect to it within ourselves and then give it away. And once we give it away, we remember how much we have to give. We remember how much love is available to us all the time. I've done that before, and it really works, because when we feel like we're lacking, we're just not in our right mind. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mentioned Edgar Casey before, and so much of what he was saying, the reason I was so intrigued by him was it related to so much of what I feel. And you just spoke about love. And he said that we should always say, God is love, God is love. And I connected to that because I say that all the time when I want to state an affirmation, when I want to feel the connection to God. Um, I say God is love. And it's just amazing how everything drops. All the illusions drop, and you're connected to that place of love. That is just so incredible. I mean, I love being in that scope where I can feel the presence of love. It is just so, it teaches us that that's really who we are. What else could there be? What greater thing could there be than that feeling of unconditional love? And who loves unconditionally that way except God? Only God loves unconditionally. And this is something we have to learn to do, to love that way. Because if we can, then you also spoke about being angry. Then how can you be angry? How can anger come into that? How can it possibly even threaten us in any way? Because it just doesn't exist. It's just it's an emotion of the body, of the ego. And then also what you were talking about brought me to lesson 135. If I defend myself, I am attacked. I always love that lesson because I find that when I get angry, what makes me angry is when I feel that I'm attacked. that makes me very angry. If I feel that I'm being attacked, then I react with anger. And that's something that I'm aware of. And then it brings me back to this lesson, if I defend myself, I am attacked. Well, it's just a matter of just not feeling attacked. When you don't feel attacked, when you don't see it as an attack, then there's no reason to defend yourself. Why defend myself against nothing? So to me, that was always a very important lesson. It was an important learning for me. And I always had problems as a younger person with anger. We go through life collecting reasons to be angry, and they store up in our minds and they just take over. And that's really why we need to discover teachings like the Course in Miracles that teaches us that we're going in the wrong direction. We're going the wrong way. And I think one of the things that Jesus said to Helen Schiffman, when she asked why he gave her the Course, I heard something on a video about that. And he told her the world is old and tired and you're going in the wrong direction. And that was the whole reason for the Course in Miracles, to be brought into the world, to show people that there definitely has to be another way, because everything is predicated. If you're living within the ego's thought system, you're really held prisoner to the ego's beliefs and the ego's dictates, and you never get out of the ego thought system. I don't think I would ever have gotten out of the ego thought system if it hadn't been the discovery of A Course in Miracles, where I read that somewhere. Perhaps it was in the Course in Miracles, that the world is old and tired. Somehow remember that phrase, and that we need to replenish ourselves by going the other way. We're going in the wrong direction. And anyway, in any event, anger is something, I think for me was something that I had to learn not to attack back. And I'm much better at it, much, much, much better at it. I don't think I do it as much anymore, which, again, there's always room for more learning. Isn't that right, Susan?
Oh yeah, yeah. I like what you brought up about what Jesus said to Helen Schuckman. And I think when when Helen and Bill originally started their relationship, um, from what I hear, they were at odds, in the hospital. And I guess they said there must be a better way. There was a lot of fighting going on. And they decided there must be a better way because they just weren't getting anywhere by continually fighting with each other. I mean, we always have a choice. It's to follow the spirit or to follow the ego. The ego is an illusion. The spirit is the truth about who we are. So when we choose to follow the Holy Spirit, we're aligning ourselves with the truth. That's why we can feel peace of God, because we're coming from a place of love. I mean, just saying those words kind of calms me down. It's interesting, and A Course in Miracles is also very clear that spirit does not have to attack the ego, because that would be giving the ego power. The spirit doesn't have to attack the ego, because the ego is an illusion. There's nothing to attack. The spirit can't even hear the ego. So when my thoughts are aligned with the spirit, when my thoughts are aligned with the truth of who I am, when my thoughts are aligned with Christ, there's nothing to fight against. And I can't even hear the fear-based thoughts of my ego. Like I can't even, when the light is on, the darkness disappears. So spirit cannot hear the ego, but then the opposite is also true. When my thoughts are connected to the ego, I can't hear spirit. Spirit does not know of ego. Ego does not know of spirit. So really we have a choice. It's one or the other. And the only thing that can make us happy is by aligning our thoughts with the thoughts of God. But the thoughts of God are the truth of who we are. I was listening to another YouTube video podcast. It was Miracles Cafe. I'm trying to think of the name of the Course in Miracles teacher that was a guest. But what happened with him, I remember him saying in this podcast, the host is Dakini Wild. He was saying that when he first started studying A Course in Miracles, he went to a lot of different Course in Miracles groups. And then what he found himself doing is channeling the words of Jesus, to help the other people in the groups understand Course in Miracles better. And I think that's amazing. I also think we all have the ability to do that. We all have the ability to channel the words of Jesus because Christ resides within each of us. I know that's what you did when you wrote your book, Private Lessons with Jesus. And I think that's amazing. Jesus kind of channeled his words through you. And I love that book that you wrote. Another point that Course in Miracles is very clear about is that God's love is not special. So if we ever come from a place where we think that we have more than our brother, or if we come from a place where we think that our brother has more than us, we are not connected to the truth. We are not connected to God. We are not connected to Christ consciousness, because all of God's gifts are given to all of God's children equally. It's like none of God's children are special, but all of God's children are special. Like we all have everything. So there is no superiority, there is no inferiority, because whenever we see ourselves as greater than or less than our brother, we have lost our connection to the truth of who we are. Which is really wonderful. It's just such a wonderful way to think about life. It's like when I see the innocence in my brother, that's how I feel the innocence in myself. So whatever I focus on in my brother is what I feel in myself. I think A Course in Miracles calls like charity. Charity is to see a brother, like in a way, further along, closer to heaven than he actually is. But by seeing the beauty, by seeing the wholeness, by seeing the clarity in my brother, that's seeing the truth of who he is. And then that's also how I remember the truth of who I am, so whatever we give away, we get to keep. So if we want something, we need to give it away. That's how we remember who and what we are. Like we have so much. Another thing is Course in Miracles says to really feel the wholeness of heaven, to really feel the deep love of God. No words can actually articulate that feeling. That's just a presence, a pure presence that can't even be articulated with words. But it's what we all strive for, and it's what we are all promised. Jesus, he already accomplished that. He already connected to the truth of who he is. And because he's already accomplished it, we are all guaranteed to get there. It's just it feels like we're still learning lessons, but the truth is we're all guaranteed to get home to heaven. I was talking to a friend on the boat about spirituality and religion. And it was funny because her husband was Catholic, and she converted to Catholicism, she said, before they had children, because they wanted to raise their children in one faith. She was some form of Christian. Her husband was Catholic, so she converted to Catholicism, and then they raised their children Catholic. And we were talking about the difference in organized religion as opposed to spirituality or A Course in Miracles. And I know there's a lot of commonalities, but I was trying to articulate the difference. And I said, one big difference that I see is that, religion teaches us to worship Jesus. A Course in Miracles says that it's not necessary to worship Jesus. Actually, Jesus doesn't want us to worship him. He wants us to be like him. And then her response to that was, well, can't you do both? Can't you worship him and strive to be like him? And I didn't answer her. But now that I think about it, I don't think you can. I don't think you can worship someone and strive to be like them, because if you worship someone, you're seeing them as superior. What do you think of that, Myrna? Can you go ahead?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yes, Jesus does not want us to worship him because he wants us to think of him as our equal. So, religion is, I think, is dogma, really. It teaches one way. Whereas with spirituality, as you learn, as you experience, you see things in a different light. And it depends on how it makes you feel. I know that when I get it, when something snaps in, something that I want to learn, something that I kind of need to feel, and somehow I can relate to it. Somehow I recognize, hey, this is something that I was supposed to learn. It didn't come from religion. It came from the spiritual part of who I am, really. So I've become completely devoid of religion. I mean, I like my religion is that of Judaism, and yet I certainly appreciate my Jewish heritage. I certainly do. And when the holidays come around, I love the dinners being served and the love really around the family table and breaking bread together and drinking wine, and all of that is wonderful. But the concepts of the religion, which is when I learned from early childhood that I was sinning. In other words, there's one holiday, it's like the holiest holiday of the year. It's called Yom Kippur. And I don't know where it came from, but in my house, we weren't allowed to turn the lights on Yom Kippur. You had to sit in the dark all night and you couldn't turn the TV on. You just had to sit in the dark, which maybe, now that I think about it, maybe it would have been a good way to meditate. I don't know. But I remember I accidentally flipped on the light, accidentally. And then I shut it off, and that night I couldn't sleep. Why? Because I thought that God was going to punish me because I turned on the light and I wasn't supposed to do that. So, religion sometimes can really put a lot of fear into you when, now I can look back and I can see how ridiculous it was, but I took it so seriously then. And the things that we take seriously, really have no meaning whatsoever, the things that we're taught. So, when Jesus says, just undo everything you've ever been taught and start with a clean slate. But that's not easy because there's so much, there's so many layers of the onion to peel away, to peel away, peel away. And who knows, perhaps it's lifetimes of this accumulation, that we hear to unravel from. I really believe that. I believe that we're here to do things that we can't do anywhere else. And I was listening to somebody on today on video as well. Sometimes I'm drawn into a near death experience. I find those fascinating. And something that was said, we come to Earth to experience things that we can't experience anywhere else, like childbirth. We want to experience childbirth. You wouldn't experience that anywhere else except here on Earth. I don't suppose there's childbirth, in the cosmos, maybe so, but I think that that's just one example that was given. And I recognize we're really here to become aware of what we're supposed to learn. And perhaps this is the fastest way to learn it on this earth. And that's why we choose to come here. And so I can feel a lot of the differences from what I was taught to what I'm learning and what I have learned and what I will go back with. Like I have no fear of death. I know there is no death. The Course in Miracles teaches that. But here at 84 years old, I really just have no thought about death. In fact, I have a deal with Jesus. I really believe that I'm just going to die in my sleep. I told Jesus that's how I'd like to die, and I'm resting assured that that's how I will die. So I'm sure I'll go before you, Susan. I'm a lot older than you. Okay, so I want you to say, "Aha!" She got her wish. I'm just gonna just that's how what I truly believe. I think that if we ask, we will receive whatever we ask for, and not be afraid of the of what the outcome is. So anyway, right, Susan?
That's right. That's right. I mean, our soul is here forever. So we were alive before we were born, like our soul was present before we were born. And then we came into these earthly bodies and we're here for such a short time to learn lessons. And then we discard our body when it no longer serves us. And we go back to the truth of who we are. I mean, I personally believe in reincarnation. So I think that if there are more lessons for us to learn, we just come back, take on another form, and repeat the lessons that we have not learned. I mean, there is no punishment. God never punishes us in any way. He does give us opportunities continually to learn deep lessons, So, I mean, so if there is something in another person, like a quality, a character trait that we have not forgiven, what is being reflected back to us is a character trait within ourselves that has not yet been healed. So the same character trait will show up repetitively in our life until we learn to forgive it. Once we forgive that trait in another person, that type of person will no longer show up. That's what I believe, because when we have resentments or grievances in our unconscious mind, these are our pain points that have not yet been healed. So that same pain point will repetitively be reflected back to us until we can truly forgive it. That's why, I mean, I know one friend of mine who has not forgiven her father, and she makes it very clear that she has not forgiven her father. And what I see in her is I see character traits of her father that she still lives out, because I think when we don't forgive someone, we have a tendency to embody those traits, or live out those traits. But in order to be released from a negative character trait, what we need to do is we need to forgive the other person. Once we truly forgive the other person, then it doesn't have to keep playing itself out in our life. And it's never about punishment, because God has no desire to punish us. If we're a part of God, we have no desire to punish ourselves, but it's like the earth is the world is giving us opportunities to heal. I think that's why we're here. We're here to heal, and yeah, it's just it's just a classroom, and we are constantly given opportunities to heal. And in terms of death, I agree with everything you said. Death is not real. In the book that I'm always looking at, Glossary of Terms from A Course in Miracles, Robert Perry, he defines death as the central illusion, the idea that eternal life can be lessened, compromised, can lose vitality, and be extinguished, excuse me. The idea that external life can be lessened, compromised, can lose vitality, and be extinguished. The single idea behind all forms of pain, lack, or limitation. The most stark example of this idea is death of the body. Death seems to be the final power in this world, for it overpowers all things in the end. But then to skip, I don't have time to read the whole thing, but when we skip down to the bottom of this definition of death, he writes, when we realize that death does not exist, we will be able to lay our bodies down voluntarily when our job here is done.
Mhm.
Or, as with Jesus, our bodies will simply vanish, because the bodies are not the truth of who we are. They're just allowing us to learn life's lessons. And our lessons, our healing lies in forgiveness. Right, Myrna?
Yes, we was talking about that, and that we are here to learn, and that's what we're here to do. And that's, if we know that and we concentrate on that, then everything else falls away. That's really not important. That doesn't teach us anything. So yeah, it's I like love, I like forgiveness, I like those words. I like to relate to those words because to me they're very healing. And the Course in Miracles certainly stresses that over and over again. And yeah, it's what we're given to do. And if we feel we're living our purpose, what greater satisfaction is that, Anyway, it's already 1:30, so
Yeah, 2:30,
no,
2:30.
2:30,
And
yes,
yeah, yeah.
2:30.
And it was great, a great, great hour. Thank you, Myrna. Thank
Great
you so
hour.
much. I love you. I love our talks. And as A Course in Miracles states, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that's real is the love. And I'm so grateful for our time here and Gather for A Course in Miracles. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Susan and Myrna. It was great to hear you, and I'm really grateful that you come to see us every twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. So missed you the other day. Grateful to have you back today. So we will see you Friday. Love you guys both. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Bob and Sally, and everybody else who came in.